Good evening. I am Robin Edwards, Senior Program Manager with National Black MBA Association, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Winning Strategies in Today's Competitive Landscape, sponsored by Danaher. The mission of the National Black MBA Association is to lead in the creation of educational, wealth building, and growth opportunities for those historically underrepresented throughout their careers as students, entrepreneurs, and professionals. Our long-lasting relationships with corporate partners like Danaher has enabled us to bring relevant information and opportunities that resonate with our members. This evening, you will hear from Danaher's leaders about today's competitive workforce. It is important when we are choosing where and whom we work that we are intentional. Danaher's leaders will share insights on how to make informed decisions and bring your authentic self to work. I would like to introduce the moderator for this evening, Anna Teller. Anna is a Director of Global Communications with Phenomenex. Anna is a renowned and award-winning executive-level communicator with more than 15 years of experience providing insight to C-suite leadership, overseeing complex projects, and creating materials, messages that reach and resonate with specialized audiences, including those of historically marginalized communities. Her experiences ranges from strategic planning, managing, executing, and evaluating marketing campaigns, including social and traditional media initiatives for many clients and industries. From First Lady Michelle Obama's office to Pantone The Color Company, she serves as a chief storyteller, creative director, and digital and social strategist from conception to execution. Simply put, she makes things memorable. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you so much, Robin. Good evening, everyone. How are you? I would just like to say, when you hear that red back, I'm like, wow, I am amazing. I'm amazing. But I am also joined by a lot of amazing folks on our line tonight. So we're going to get started in just a moment, but I know it's in the evening if you're on the East Coast, probably the middle of the day if you're on the West Coast, and if you're joining us from overseas, who knows what time it is. So I want to kind of set the stage and some context. This is going to be a great conversation, right? We're having a topic that's serious, and yes, we're all wanting to get more information about how to compete in this landscape, but I also want it to be fun and engaging. So I want all of us right now, no matter where you are, we're going to do one thing. We're going to all take a deep breath in. We're just going to let it all out, right? You're just going to let it all out. Whatever you think this webinar is about today, however you think we're going to act, that's great, amazing Danaher leaders. We will show up in that way, but I wouldn't be true to myself if I didn't bring some of my energy and my flavor to this conversation. So with that being said, this is a conversation. It's going to be as engaging as possible. And I want to share with you how you can participate all night long. So most of the time we would tell people, do not open up any other tabs. Do not grab your phone, but I am going to ask you to do those two things right now, because I am going to show you a screen and you're going to have an opportunity to participate along in this conversation. So you can go ahead, open up another tab, grab your screen, and I'm going to explain to you what we're going to do tonight. Give you a moment, and then while I set this up. Also, let me get my music. I had a little music for us to kind of get us into the right conversation. So I'm going to start that up while I share. And I see a lot of people still joining. Welcome, welcome. As you get your tab open, we're going to start in just a second. Let's get this music on. Can you all hear my music? Awesome. Can you all see my screen? Not yet? Yes? Because as a presenter, I can't see it. So I just need you all to give me that feedback versus having. Awesome. Now everyone should have what they need. Everyone should have all of their energy. Everyone should be really, really hyped for this conversation. And what we're going to do tonight, I want you to go to menti.com menti.com and use this code that's right at the top of your screen. What this is going to do is going to allow you to participate in our conversation today. As you hear things mentioned by our panel, I want you to put them here and share your key takeaways. I'm calling them major key alerts. Something that resonates with you may resonate with a whole bunch of other people. So I'll be reflecting here all night. I'll be pulling out some major keys, and then we'll share this at the end of the presentation. We'll share it with everyone, but you can go ahead and go to menti.com. I'll put the code in the chat box as well, but we're going to be just having a great engaging conversation. And with that being said, let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen and introduce our wonderful, wonderful panelist that is joining us this evening. Awesome. Oh, everybody just kind of shifted around. Can you all see me still? This is great. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce, starting off with the wonderful Alex here. And also, because you all have your name, but please just raise your hand so everyone on the screen can see you at the same time as I introduce you. Alex Desamore joined Danaher in April 2022 as the Vice President of Talent Acquisition. Alex began his career at FedEx as an operations manager, progressing through various HR roles. Now, what I found out about Alex, which was very, very interesting, he comes from a family of HR professionals, including 3 siblings who serve in the HR field. With that being said, I can only just imagine growing up in a family that knew the importance of keeping receipts and detailed notes. Before joining Danaher, Alex was the global leader of recruitment at Novo Nordisk. He holds a bachelor's in labor relations from State University of New York and an MBA from Dowling University. He is based in New Jersey, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here, Alex. Michelle Gao has been with Danaher for 8 years. In her role as the leader of the leadership development team, she sets strategic direction of the leadership development programs for Danaher. Michelle's bachelor's was in accounting, which probably came in handy during her first role at Danaher operating company Videojet, where she wore 2 hats in compensation and talent management. I'd like to thank Videojet personally for lighting that talent management fire underneath Michelle. She has been an amazing asset to Danaher. Michelle graduated from Danaher's HRDP program, which is our Human Resources Development Program, and holds a master's degree in Human Resources and Industrial Relations from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And in 2020, Michelle was selected as a member of the Learning Guild's prestigious 30 Under 30 cohort. Michelle, I'm so happy to have you here with us today. And last but not least is Lindsay Norvog. Lindsay will tell you she has a passion for inclusion, communications, and driving strategic culture efforts within organizations. As a recovering marketing professional, my words, not hers, she made a pivot from marketing and corporate communications to become a practicing global diversity and inclusion professional, and we are all better for it. She is able to cultivate an environment of inclusion and belonging while serving as a multifaceted operational leader and serving operational problems. Thank you so much for being here with us, Lindsay. So with that being said, I see some major keys coming in, and we're going to start this discussion. I'm going to go ahead and open up with Alex. Alex, you've been at Danaher for 6 months, and Michelle, you've been at Danaher for 8 years. Alex, what would you say was your contributing factor in joining Danaher? And Michelle, what would you say is your contributing factor for you staying at Danaher? Alex, I believe you're on mute.
Yeah, I know. After 3 years of doing this, you would think I'd know how to do it by now. But I did not know a lot about Danaher when I was contacted. I was told, hey, here's this company, Fortune 130, $30 billion a year. And I started doing some research. And what really interested me about coming to Danaher was joining Danaher, you're joining over 20 companies. And that's a rare opportunity to join a company where you have access to grow your career by having over 20 other companies that you can move around in. So that's what enticed me to join Danaher.
And that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Michelle, hearing that, what kind of keeps you at Danaher?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's three things. The people and relationships, the business scale, and the career opportunities. So all of those things align to my personal values in a lot of ways. I think just pride in what our organization does. We protect and save lives across all of our businesses, which is really motivating to me when I think about just the output that we provide as what we do. That's awesome. I'm a pretty ambitious person. I have a lot of personal ambition. And when you come to a large global organization that plays in a lot of different industries, the opportunities for career development are pretty endless. And then most importantly for me, it's the people and relationships. So if I didn't like / love the people that I work with, I really wouldn't stay. So Danaher working here has just provided me the opportunity to build, maintain, grow all of these relationships as I also grow. And so you get to work with the same people in different ways as you move across the organization as well.
I'm glad that you said, you both touched about like being a part of this family. And we were just talking like right before we joined about like how I explain what Danaher is to other people. I say like, it's, you know, Danaher is our mom and they have over 25 other children that you can kind of just get to know and hop around to and get a chance to explore and grow. So it's really a key selling point for coming here. And as we think about, you know, what kind of brought us here and we're all a part of the Danaher family, I would like to ask Lindsay, like if you were looking for a new role today, what would be your top 3 attributes that the company has to have? Like, what are your non-negotiables for the company when you're evaluating that can help our participants understand what they should be looking for?
Yeah, so I think this is such a personal question because no matter what and who you are going to be looking for different things. But for me, when I came to VideoJet and Danaher, I wanted to know that the company knew who they wanted to be. So working in the HR space, and especially in the global pandemic and crazy times that we've had recently, there's a lot of companies that didn't really know their way. They didn't know where they stood on certain social aspects, different things, different philanthropies. And for me, it was really important to understand the company that I was looking at or that I would be looking at now or in the future, really knew who they were. And then for me, it's the culture that I feel included in and that I can be my authentic self. So I think we hear about this and we say these words all the time, especially in the field that I work in, but really where I feel that I'm seen and heard and valued as an associate, and that I can look at those things via a website or through the interview process and really feel that versus just feel that maybe it's lip service that somebody's saying to me. And then I think lastly, it's something that excites me every day, similar to what Michelle was saying, that I don't want to work for a company that I don't believe in what they believe in, or that I'm doing the same thing every day. And sometimes that's a personal, I like a little bit of crazy. And so I want to be able to leave my fingerprints and handprints on an organization and know that I have the autonomy to really be able to go to work and put in the work that I want to.
You really dropped some major keys in there, and I don't want us to kind of like go by them. You said some incredible things. So one, I want to work backwards, you know, starting with work that excites you. We often hear about people just getting in a role and they don't stay long because they're not excited about the company. And I think that's incredibly important because you have to get up. I heard a statistic, we spend most of our adult life at work. Let's just let that think for a second. We spend most of our adult life at work. So don't you want to work for a place that really excites you and makes you, you know, happy to go there in the morning? And then also something you said that I wanted to put on, not only just show up excited, but then get a chance to be seen and heard and be yourself. And I think those are major keys that I just don't want us to miss. And what you said, because you said so much, and I just wanted to pause there because that's very incredible. Those are non-negotiables that I think you have worked up to in your career. And I'll come back to it. So like what advice you can give people who are just entering when they're, you know, having these conversations about what's important to them. I'm going to go take our next question over to Michelle. The Great Resignation has taken on several names, the great sabbatical, the great evaluation, a great application. Now we're quietly quitting, and some people not so quietly at all. Considering like all of these things, how have you helped leaders adapt, and as a leader yourself, to meet the ever-changing needs of the environment that we're in right now?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that the question is phrased, how have you adapted? Because I feel like I'm constantly adapting. I feel like this is a constantly evolving, constantly shifting situation. And so every day I'm like, okay, and now what am I going to find? So I would say that no one has it figured out. And there is actually there's some comfort in that everyone in the world is figuring it out together. And I do think the best thing that we can do as leaders, though, is to check in with our associates and also check in with ourselves if we bring diverse perspectives to the table. So most of our leaders, when people get to leadership, they're usually later in their lives. And, sometimes with that, or normally with that, comes children, comes having a family, etc. Not always. I certainly do not have a family. Feeling okay about that. But when you get people who are in the same life situation in the room and they're the people with power, they think about the things that affect their own lives. So, gosh, we should, put more policies in place around childcare. We should put more policies in place around XYZ, because we always look to ourselves when we come to what do our associates need in the moment. We start with, well, what do I need in the moment? So the more diverse voices we can have in the room of people experiencing life differently, I think the more we can check in with each other on what everyone needs, rather than, oh, this is what I need as a leader, so I expect everyone else to need this too. I think that's really important. And then also, just from like a work perspective, I am in charge of leadership development. Learning is my whole team. And we have been trying to pivot with the pandemic. So for instance, we moved all of our programs from face-to-face to virtual, and now we're like, okay, well, how do we use the best of what we've got and hybridize? So we're trying to kind of read the tea leaves and not only keep up with the industry, but come up with some cool things to make us stay ahead or lead and be on the cutting edge of industry as well. So excited about that.
Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. When you talked about this like adaptation, right? And I want to put on two things that you said, and then also a question I'm going to kick around to the team here. You said two things, like as a leader, as you kind of get older and you get up in your leadership role, you get more comfortable knowing what you need and being able to voice what you need. Mm-hmm. What advice would, I'm gonna go to Alex first, and then I'll go to you, Lindsay. What advice will you give someone who's probably new in their career and they're still trying to understand the dynamics of what are there consequences to asking for these things? Or, when you're starting with a new role, do you have any advice as we get older and in our roles, we're comfortable in that and knowing what you need, but any advice that you would give to someone just starting out? And I'll go to you first, Alex, and then I'll go to you, Lindsay.
Yeah. So if you're, when you're interviewing for a job, if you're making a move, remember, it's a dialogue, it's a conversation. You should also be interviewing your manager and the company to make sure that it's aligned with your needs, your values, because it's important that you set that stage at the start, so there's alignment, versus walking in and then later on saying, hey, this is not what I expected, or things need to be different. So I think the first step is, when you're going for a role, is make sure it's not a one-way conversation, that you're actually, having a conversation. Hey, I want to make sure I'm the right fit for this, and our values are aligned. So I have some questions that I need to ask about work-life balance or whatever. The strategy in talent acquisition is wait until they fall in love with you, right? If there's 20 candidates and you have not, risen to the top yet, I would say wait. But once, the company falls in love with you, we will work with you. And that's any company. This is not just Danaher advice. This is basically how it works once you're the candidate that we love. So that would be my recommendation, is to negotiate up front.
Lindsay, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Michelle was talking, I was kind of giggling in the background because for me, it's my job to understand a little bit about what everybody wants. So when it was, as we move into leadership and we listen and learn and kind of change policy or things based on what we might feel, it's my job to say, okay, but what about that person that might not have a child or might this or just these different things, and kind of taking it all in from my seat as diversity and inclusion lead. And really, I had the exact conversation that Alex is having with one of our general management development program interns over the summer. And he said, I love that you are really open with that you're, heading out to go and pick up your son, or, how do you get to that point? And I said exactly what Alex said, is have that conversation. It's not a, what are my working hours? It is, hey, is there flexibility of when I can start and when I can finish? And I know the easiest time to have that and set some of those guidelines and kind of where you're at is when you're new. And I think for me, even moving from my last role, which was in executive communications, that was all day, every day, whenever somebody wanted to call. I think, Anna, you're smiling because it's like, we need to get this press release out and it's 10 p.m. and I'm going to call you. So when I made the move into the space that I'm in now, I really had some of those conversations. And for me, it's, I block my time. It's really important to me to be able to drop off my son to school, and that's at 7:45. So if there's a call that starts at 8, I'll see you at about 8:04 or 8:05 after I drop them off. And my team knows that. And I think as a leader, casting that right shadow for people and giving them permission to do the same is really, really important.
Thank you for both of you all for sharing those insights. As someone who just hired someone and went through this process, and I was looking at data, just so candidates know and our attendees and participants know, it's costly for us to hire the wrong person. And it's costly for us to hire someone that will leave, and because it's not working, because you had a need that we didn't know about and wasn't able to plan for, adapt for. And so we just tell us up front. And like Alex said, once we in love with you, we will negotiate and work with you. And so just have that confidence and that power, because on the other end, we don't want to get you in and then just to have you leave, because that's costly. I'm going to segue a little bit into a question for you, Alex, too. We know people are resigning for several reasons. Salary is one, but a recent study by Forbes and Pew said people left their jobs for lack of opportunities and the ability to try something different. And then they felt disrespected or invisible. What advice do you give those who want to pivot into something else? Lindsay shared that she was in executive communications and wanted to do something else. What advice do you give someone that's been working in one line of work for many, many years, but want to stretch and grow in another area?
Well, the good news is I've done this, so I think I can speak from experience. I started my career as an operations manager and pivoted to HR. So let me tell you just a little bit of the story. The first thing I did was I did some research. I did some networking as to what is it like to be an HR professional. So the best way to do that is I highly recommend you set up an exploratory or informational conversation with somebody that's in the role. So you have a great understanding of what that job is that you want to do in another field. 2, I would recommend you look at your resume, you look at your background, and you look at your skills. What skills do you have that are transferable? You're doing this, but these skills are also applicable over here, and you're bringing a benefit to this new role. So example, as an operations manager, I was Six Sigma certified. And my future boss was like, wow, I have somebody that can bring some rigor to HR. I'm interested, even though they don't have an HR background, but because they're bringing something else that I don't have. So the key is, what is the value proposition that you're going to bring into the new role? And sometimes you will have to educate the manager or the person on how you can add the value because of the different perspective that you're bringing from the role, and then also be ready to answer any objections. Because there are people, hey, I need someone who's done this for 10 years, come over and do it 10 more years for me. So the key is look at your skills, look at your background, look at the job, and say, based on this job, here's the things that I can bring to the table. The other stuff I can ramp up and learn pretty quickly, but I'm going to bring a different perspective that's going to make the department or the job, more powerful and add more value. And companies are open right now for this because there's a shortage of talent. So this is the time to actually do something like this because companies are very open to transferable skills.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a major key, there are two major keys in there, and I wanted to just pull them out. And sometimes we get our resume, and I get it, when we're just trying to apply to different roles, we're taking our standard resume and we're applying to multiple jobs with that same resume. And as someone that was on the job seeking side, it's easier, right? Copy, paste, submit, click. I want to just share something that Alex said. It's like highlighting those transferable skills in that way. For a role I recently had and I was hiring for, I had someone reach out to me because they weren't selected for an initial screening, and they were like, I know how to do all of these things, and why wasn't I selected for a screening? And I was like, in your resume, I don't see these things. You're telling me you can do all these things, but I am reviewing dozens, if not hundreds of applicants. And I'm looking to see that those skills that I'm saying I need project management skills, and you're saying you have that. Let's highlight that. Let's pull it through, list some tools, making sure that and they were transferring from public health, wanting to get into corporate comms. And so you just have to make the connection sometimes. The second major key that I heard is about this networking, right? This you said having these informational interviews and conversations. And with that, I want to ask you, Michelle, networking in a post-COVID world looks and feels different. There are virtual conferences everywhere. There are all these Teams meetings. Like, what networking advice would you give our participants, students, alum who are actively and passively seeking their next role?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first and most important thing I think I'll say to answer this question is the quality of your connections versus the quantity, especially in this post-COVID world. So I know that a lot of you are going to meet face-to-face in Atlanta. That's great. But one of the worst things that happens to me in terms of virtual networking is when someone just connects with me on LinkedIn, no message. I have no idea who you are. I have no idea why you want to connect with me. I don't know if you want to sell me something. And so I just ignore because it doesn't mean anything. So quality of connections, if you are going to connect with someone or have a conversation with them, come in knowing what you want to learn from them, and also come with what you have to offer as well. I think earlier in my career, even when I was a student, networking always just kind of felt so bad because I felt it was always, you give something to me because I desperately need a job. But no, you come with a lot of experience. You come with a lot of life already. So don't discount that. Come in feeling like you have something to offer the conversation as well. Finally, do your research on who you want to connect with. So again, that quality over that quantity. Don't just throw a wide net. First of all, that takes just as much energy as it does to really focus in on certain people. So do that instead. It's going to be a lot more fruitful.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And on that thread, I know we all were talking about how when we start promoting the webinar, we got connections. And so for everyone that let us know that you were joining today and that's how you were connecting with us, we appreciate it. I will go ahead and drop my LinkedIn in the chat. You go ahead and let me know that you attended this forum and we make a meaningful connection. We're getting ready to come to our audience engagement section. I have one more question that I'm going to ask Lindsay, and then we're going to open it up to you. So if you have questions, go ahead and place them in the Q&A box. I see some coming in, so I'll have those there. But I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to get your thoughts together, and then we'll also look at some of our major keys that and they're just like scrolling up on this side. I'm really, really happy. So Lindsay, in an earlier conversation with Alex, I talked about how Forbes were saying people were leaving their jobs, not only for lack of opportunities and ability to try something different, but also feeling disrespected and invisible. in their role. And you even highlighted when you talked about your non-negotiables, going to a place where you feel seen and heard and valued. Diversity and inclusion is more than a hot topic here at Danaher. I know all of us on this panel touch it in some type of way. And being that it's fundamental in how we operate our business, and we're evolving now to not only include the D, which is diversity, but also inclusion, what are some ways that you bring inclusion to your teams? Especially in this remote environment, what are some inclusion activities that you have?
Yeah, so kind of my mantra on inclusion, and I'm unapologetically inclusive, and I continue to tell people that the first conversation you have is not ever going to be a difficult conversation or a courageous conversation or enter any of these other buzzwords that get thrown around diversity and inclusion, and that it really just foundationally starts with people. So back to the networking, have meaningful conversations, understand who someone is and know who they are. And then maybe the next time that something, whether it's, externally and socially, or you need some help or those different things, then it's a meaningful connection. And so when relationships are based in that, then you're learning, you're growing, you're having those conversations, and you're able to be inclusive. I think people think inclusion is really scary, but really when it comes down to it, it is just good nature. It is making sure that you are being a good human. You are giving everyone a chance to speak in the meeting, in the post-COVID world or wherever we're living and coming back around. It's making sure that someone, even on a Zoom call, has a voice. And, hey, Alex, I've heard you haven't jumped into this conversation more recently. Can you tell us what you think? And it's really just, it's not big things. It's those little things that make people feel like they're a part of the team. And, I see it all the time in some of these meetings that are hybrid now, that we have people in the office and people on the phone, and people that are on the phone don't feel that they can just jump in because they're kind of playing, like double dutch here of, okay, I think I can jump in after Anna said something. And, oh, wait, no, Michelle's going because she's in the room. So I think it's just being cognizant and being aware of what that looks like. I mean, there's a ton of inclusive icebreakers and different things like that. But what it really comes down to, and some of them are really fun. Some of them are, we did an exercise that was, what's your name? Where's it from? Where did it come from? Are you named after someone? Is it, again, that isn't, and it has nothing to do with diversity, but now I just learned a little bit more about you. And then in that conversation, I learned that you're named after, your grandmother, and so am I, and whatever that is. So creating those real and authentic bonds, I think, are the basis for inclusion. And when you move into an organization and have the ability to do that, that's when people start to feel psychologically safe to have some of those tougher conversations.
Thank you for sharing how you build it. I'm actually gonna ask, I think everyone on here kind of leads a team. So I'm gonna, before we get into the question, I just want to put on that a little bit and ask Michelle and Alex, just so you all know, Anna means grace. Thank you. There you go. Alex, what is the inclusion activity that you have with your team?
Well, I'm relatively new, so some of my inclusion activities are going to be from previous companies. So we've had different types of exercises, and what I've learned about my team by having these exercises or these activities is to understand where they are in the journey, because everybody is in a different place. And especially when you talk about diversity, to some people, diversity is a very emotionally charged topic. And for some people, they feel it means white male excluded. And what I've had is educational opportunities where besides, the things that we can see and that we measure, diversity is much broader than that. There's we use, I'm sure some people are familiar with the iceberg, right? The tip of the iceberg is the smallest, and that's what you see. But underneath, there's this big mass. That's what diversity is. And educating them that there's something in it for everybody. It's not just for minorities. So I think understand where people are in the journey, and then educating them so that everybody has the same level of understanding and learning helps the team become more cohesive. That something's in it for everybody.
Love that. Michelle, anything to add?
I have so many things to add, as usual. Actually, I'm gonna kind of answer this on 3 different levels because just from my work perspective, when we think about putting D&I learning together, I just had a conversation with one of my direct reports like an hour ago on this, so I'm excited that this is coming up. When we want to teach something around diversity and inclusion, it's much less, this is D&I, here's the business case, it's good, you should do it. And more, how do we create an experience for the people in the room to be like, oh my God, inclusion is just, I know more about you, and therefore I want to create more space for you. So it's leading people to that aha instead of, please do it, right? Because we can tell people to do something like that all day, but it's more around getting them to that epiphany. And then just as a leader, I think one-on-one can look different than others. So in my one-on-ones with my direct reports, I really try and remember personal details about them. If you've got 2 kids, how old are they? Is one potty training right now? How's that going? How's your sleep? Things like that, just creating space for the whole person and making space for kind of that humanity inside of the work as well.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you shared that. I was just sharing with my VP of Human Resources. I have associate profiles on all of my direct reports, and like I take them through the exercises of not only learning more about them, but also they take an assessment. I know we love our assessments with our associate resource group, but just really understanding what's important to them, what their values are, how they show up, because all of those things really do matter, and they help them feel more included. So I'm going to pivot to our questions, and you guys can just hop in. You can just say if you want to tag a question. We have lots of questions going on in the chat. As I go over there, I just want to just share, first of all, thank you everyone for participating. Like, we have so many major keys coming in, so many takeaways. I'm so happy to share all of this with you later, and just keep them coming, because this has been great value added and for everyone. And if you want to go ahead and add something there, please do. We will be sharing it. So the first question that we have is, how do Danaher professionals, how do we view people who want to transition into something different? Like, is it more important to have the experience in the area or the excitement and willingness to learn?
So I'll start off, and people please jump in. From a talent acquisition perspective, I have to be honest, most managers prefer somebody who have done it before, because it makes their job easier, right? You just show up and I don't have to tell you where things are, and my life is easier. But there are quite a few progressive managers who see value in somebody with a different background and how they complement their team, their existing team. This person's bringing something different and they're motivated. You know, they have the will to do something different, and they want to learn something different. So the answer is both. There is no, of course, experience is the first thing, but I'm seeing much more progressive, leaders who are saying, hey, the next opportunity I get to hire, I want to hire something different because I'm missing this from my team, and to complement my team, I need this skill set.
I can jump in here. I would say kind of 2 things. First, maybe not as eloquent as Alex, I say shoot your shot. I mean, there are times that, it's already very well known that underrepresented minorities and women do not, research shows that we do not apply for something unless we feel we meet all of the qualifications on a list. And Alex can probably corroborate here that nobody meets every single thing on the list. So if there are a few things that you don't, I would say have that conversation, and going back to what Alex said, and then prove how you can upskill to learn the rest. I mean, again, I basically moved from communications into HR with no prior HR experience. I, got myself, from an education perspective, I rose my hand and said, hey, I want to go to Cornell and do this program. So I really kind of supplemented the skills that I didn't have and proved how I could do that. And I think the other piece is exactly right what Alex is saying, that not only are there some more progressive managers and Michelle, you can probably agree here too, we are moving towards teaching those managers and training those managers who don't have that skill right now or are not as open to becoming that open. So right now, you know, at my OpCo, it's what do we mean by the best candidate? The best candidate in one person or one manager's eyes might be the person that has 10 years of experience. The best candidate to the next manager might look like someone who has the appetite and the ability to learn, grow, and run fast. And then at the third manager level, it might be somebody that, hey, this person could develop and grow and move from this role and be really great at it 6 months and then have my job in 5 years. So I think looking at what really the best candidate means to people and making sure that we're having those broader conversations is really, you know, where we're moving to. So we're trying to pull those managers that want that 15-year experience only along to the progression that Alex is talking about too.
Thank you. There's a manager question here. And so I'm glad you mentioned managers. I'm gonna go to you, Michelle. It says, what advice would you give someone for managing a team for the first time? I'm really interested in management, but I've never done it before. Is there some advice that you can give me?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to sneak this in. I had one thing to add to Alex and Lindsay's answers on the last one, is that when you get into Danaher, actually our development perspective is to push people into things that you've never done before. We really believe that development happens when you're uncomfortable. The point is not that you're uncomfortable all the time, but a lot of the time it's do something that you've never done before. We're going to give you a safety net and we're going to give you support. But when you think about some of our award-winning programs like GMDP or HRDP, those are meant to be rotational programs where you have no idea what you're doing, frankly, and you're still expected to deliver, again, with all of the support. So once you're kind of in the organization, our development philosophy is we're going to keep pushing you if you want to be pushed. Okay, so new managers. The first, I think, is just to recognize the position power that you now have as a new manager. So you have all sorts of responsibilities. And with those responsibilities comes that aspect of power. People are going to listen to you and treat you differently just because you're now in this role that you have. And so any power is a type of privilege. You've got to think about what that is and what that means for the people who report to you. And then I think it's getting the basics down. How do you think about managing, keeping the trains on time, getting the work done, making sure your output is what you need it to be? And then after you get that done, you can start thinking about being a more visionary leader. How can you inspire people to give their best? How can you start developing those on your team to take your position or even surpass you? But I think when you're just starting out, the basics of it, you don't have to, I want to be the greatest leader there ever was. I think that's a great aspiration, but what does it mean to be a manager? Do you know how to approve time cards? Do you know how to approve time off? Let's get the basics down first. Make sure that your team knows how to deliver, they know your style, and then you can worry about everything else.
That's a major key. She gave some extra major keys in there, but that last one about just even the basics. What you don't want to do is be that manager that like hasn't figured out how to do time cards because you're trying to figure out how to be revolutionary. And so that is one way to get people to not be on your side. You talked about, so I want to ask another question here because you talked about like this culture at Danaher of pushing people. And we have a question here that says, can you comment on the feedback culture at Danaher? Is it consistent and honest or constructive? Like, how is it? Who would like to take that question?
I could take that one. I think Danaher and other companies are doing more listening now more than ever, especially with kind of the talent market that we're seeing. Yes, there's surveys, there's engagement surveys, there's our goal setting season, which I love and which I thought was really unique to Danaher, was that there's kind of two parts to your goals and what you're looking to do, and development for growth goals and performance for growth goals. And I thought that that was really unique at Danaher, that they were really kind of separated out, because at every other company that I've worked for, the performance goals are kind of what took, center stage, and your development always was like, oh yeah, and I'll get to that. Or, the professional development, I want to get to, everybody always had like, I want to get to one conference and learn, or whatever that was. And it always kind of fell to the wayside. So what I really loved is that the manager that I have at Danaher really started off with those questions of what do you want to do next? And then pushed me to really understand who and where I was and what I needed to do to supplement to get to that next part. So I think ongoing conversations, it's not just set your goals and set it and forget it. And then, going back to what to do as a manager is really building that rapport with someone so that you're not waiting 6 months to then give the constructive criticism of, hey, I think you could have done this a little bit differently. It's ongoing and it's regular. So whether that's in your regular one-on-ones to spend that time doing, and then obviously, yes, there's the performance conversations, but my manager also has career conversations with me, and they're decoupled, which I really like. So it's, hey, this is where we're at today. Let's, realign on goals. And then next week, let's talk about where you want to go, because otherwise you kind of sometimes run out of time. So I think it's constant, it's regular, and it's kind of built into the fabric of the conversations that we have every day.
You'll hear a lot of Danaher people say we have this spirit of continuous improvement, and it's true. It's literally built into our culture. You will try something, you may fail at it, and that's fine. Let's have the conversation. Let's get the feedback, and let's figure out how to do it again. Right. And again, we try storm left and right. You don't have to let perfect get in the way of progress. And I think that is true to our culture here as well. And I want to double down on something that Lindsay said and put it out as a major key, because she said, her manager asked her, what does she want to do next? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we just have to make sure that we're prepared in ourselves for when those questions come and those opportunities come, to be able to clearly articulate to the people who can probably pull us through and help us navigate that. What does that look like? Even if it seems very far off, put it out there, and your manager, and especially in the Danaher culture, they will connect it and figure out how to, do it. D4G, development for growth, is a real thing. Michelle talked about our professional development here. So I would echo what you say, that it is consistent. It's constant thing, and it's constructive. I mean, it's a conversation. You are in control of your career. I want people to feel empowered by that.
Yeah. And I want to just add something, and this is just from the other panelists, some things that they've said. Way back, there was a seminar I went to, and this individual coined the phrase, you need to be the CEO of Me Incorporated, right? And what that means is, you have to manage your career. And as a CEO, the business you're running is your career. And your shareholders are your family and the people that depend on you. And you don't want to disappoint your shareholders, right? And that's where this ties all into the network. You're only as powerful as your network. And should anything ever happen to you, you should be able to pick up the phone, call somebody in your network, and somebody answers the phone and gives you some advice. And that's part of being a good CEO of Me Incorporated. It's a simple concept, and if you run your career that way, you're always thinking of the future like a good CEO does. Future growth, what's next? What's the next business I'm going to get into, and stuff like that. You have to start managing your career that way.
Love that.
Love that. So these next few questions are kind of tactical, but I think they're important, because we all have, we see the TikToks about, why do you need me to upload my resume and then insert my resume? And what is happening here? Are you guys really paying attention to that? So some of these questions are related to resumes. And for those who are in the hiring position, and applying to roles that require much more soft skills than technical skills, where they may be more important, thinking about D&I roles, HR roles. How do you put those on your resume? Is there something you can do to make that stand out more, where it doesn't seem like it's just added information, but it's really important to the role or the job?
I think you have to make decisions. I think, one of the panelists made a comment, or it might have been you, Anna, that people have a generic resume and they apply for every job. You should customize your resume based on the job, because not all your experience will apply for the job that you're, applying for. So it requires a little more effort. but you should always tweak your resume and say, this is not as important, but these here are more important. So I want to highlight them and have them up front because they match some of the skills that are required, for the job. So I think customizing, tweaking, and editing your resume for the position. And from a TA perspective, according to statistics, you just need 75% of a match for the job. It doesn't have to be 100% to be considered for the job. So I think tweaking it as much as possible and not using one resume is what I would advise.
Michelle, you have something to add?
Yeah, completely agree with Alex. And can I also say that soft skills lead to impact? So the more that you can show us what the impact was, like if you can provide data, so you could write on your resume, I am an excellent communicator. Or you can say, I worked on a 24-month project that impacted 30,000 associates working with X number of stakeholders with a 96% success rate. I read that and I know you have to be a good communicator because you were able to pull that off. So tell me what your impact was and tell me what the scope of what you did was, rather than just, I am good at this, I am certified in this. Tell me what you did and I am smart enough to read between those lines.
Yeah. And I guess maybe also as the resident, like diversity and inclusion person, have to weasel my way in here and say, gone are the days that communication, D&I are soft skills. You have to have them from a leadership perspective in order to go where you're looking to go. So when I have leaders that are a little bit resistant to, leaning into some of the, inclusion or representation conversations and things like that, they're gonna hit a ceiling at some point, because wherever, whether it's at Danaher or you wanna, pivot and go outside, those skills that were maybe a soft skill before of, oh, I'm an empathetic leader, or those different things, gone are the days where they're soft and they need to be woven into everything that you're doing. A leader that can produce, that does not have those, will, kind of hit that wall eventually. And so I would, from a TA perspective, or looking at someone that maybe has a mix, you can teach someone, how to impact the bottom line and all of those different things through kind of some of those hard skills from a supply chain or sales or that. It's a lot harder to fundamentally change someone's background, history, behavior. And if people are already halfway there, I choose them as going back to kind of that best hire that we were talking about.
Thank you all for sharing that. Thank you, Michelle, for reading my resume bullet points. Also, I appreciate it. And the next question is, does Danaher expect cover letters when people are applying? Do you read a cover letter when you have a job application? And let me a round robin. It's gonna be a yes or a no. I see. So okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put that major key out there. Cover letters is a no. It's not needed, not necessary. Let's have those impact statements woven into your resume and not necessarily having to have the cover letter. I think this is groundbreaking news right now.
I would say have them woven in, but also, again, going back to the networking and back to different things. I mean, the first thing that someone does is pick up your LinkedIn profile in terms of, whether that is, TA or a recruiter or a sourcer is flipping it to a hiring manager. The hiring manager might see your LinkedIn profile before they even see your resume. And, the resume is getting attached to the interview, appointment. Sometimes it's read, sometimes it's not. I see Alex rolling his eyes. I mean, many times I have gotten on a interview panel and I pride myself on feeling like I am a great interview panelist. And sometimes, guess what? I don't even look at the resume before I get there, because I want to know who you are, what you bring to the table, exactly what Michelle was saying. Tell me about those impact things. I don't have a set question. I mean, obviously if somebody asks me, hey, can you pull out of Anna X, Y, or Z, or get her experience in this space, I will go there by way of what book have you read last, and tell me about this, and different things that bring out some of those stories and some of those experiences. So, going back to, yes, cater your resume. I think that as sourcers and recruiters are looking at it, they want to see that. I think good practice is to read the job description and make sure that some of those requirements and some of the duties, there are some, synergies in the things that you're putting on your resume as well. And then it comes down to those conversations and being able to answer some of those questions to show that impact. So, again, I just did a personal branding, workshop with my OpCo on, we did new headshots and people, updated their LinkedIn and put some of those, personal statements on there as well as some of their experience. And I think that's kind of that first look, because even when we're prospecting, sometimes, our TA leads are looking there and trying to find you that way. So you might not even have that resume ready yet.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'm going to pivot over to give it back to Robin. So I'm going to ask one last question to the whole panel, but this next question is for Michelle. So while Michelle is answering, one question that's in here is, what is something that excites you about Danaher's future? And how would you sell that to someone interested to come into Danaher? But Michelle, there's a very specific question here for you related to the HRDP program in terms of, is it a program that people can apply to outside of being a Danaher associate? And if so, what are some competitive skills or traits that you're looking for that particular program?
Big question, good question. So there are two ways that people can be accepted into the HR development program. One is through being an MBA hire. So this is exciting. You're all part of an MBA organization here. And you can come in kind of as an intern and try us out and then come back full-time if you're made an offer, or we accept full-time MBA hires into the HRDP as well. The other way that you can get in is if you are already in HR at Danaher and you kind of fit certain target criteria that we have, you can be nominated in internally as well. I would say probably that the two biggest kind of skills characteristics that you need to be successful in HRDP are, one, learning agility. So this program is meant to put you in situations that you're uncomfortable with, as we do with many of our development programs. So as Anna said, I started in comp and talent management, and then I moved to being an HR business partner before I moved into learning and development at corporate. And each of those opportunities was very, very different. And I had to learn very, very quickly because Danaher and our OpCos don't really slow down for anyone. They're like, you're new, great, start running. It's going to be fine. And then the other thing I think is just that hunger to keep growing and learning. Remembering that it is a development program, you are expected to move every 18 to 24 months. So figuring out that combination of learning agility and being able to keep absorbing, I think would lead to some great success there.
Thank you, Michelle. So this is our lightning round. In one sentence, I'm going to challenge you all. What excites you about Danaher's future, Alex?
It's the future. We're going deep into science, technology, and digital. That's the type of company we're going to become. And it's going to have a big impact on patients. So I'm excited about that.
Lindsay.
Ooh, I think what excites me the most is the opportunity to have an impact. So whether that be sitting in HR and bringing in some of the top talent within, from outside in and growing and developing and being able to support exactly what Alex just said. So being a part of it and being able to make sure that we are bringing in the right people in order to support that.
Michelle.
I love this going last because I can say what they said, and talent development. The more that our organization grows, whether it's organically or inorganically through M&A, we need the best talent to keep the business going. And with that means that, one, I'm going to have a job forever, and two, that we get to keep developing people.
Thank you all so much for giving your time this evening. I say time is the most precious gift that we can give to others. And I thank you for spending this last hour with us in this conversation and sharing all of your major keys with us and your experience. And with that, I would also like to thank National Black for having us today. And I'm turning it back over to Robin.
Wow, thank you. You need to be the CEO of Me Incorporated. I absolutely love that quote. What a great way to think about your professional career. Thank you to Danaher for a very informative presentation. A few things that I heard that really resonated is, one, being able to bring your authentic self to work is imperative to your success and when you're choosing where you want to work. Two, don't be afraid. Go for it. Go for a position you want, even if you don't currently have the skills or the experience. Just go for it. What can you lose, right? Nothing beats a failure but a try. Or nothing beats a try but a failure. One of those ways. Three, lastly, there are leaders that value bringing a different energy and skill set to your team. So great, encouraging information. So thank you so much, Danaher, for a really, really great invitation, a great presentation. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about National Black's 44th Annual Conference this year. It will be held in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Georgia World Congress Center, September the 27th through October the 1st, where you will have the opportunity to connect with over 250 companies that are actively looking to fulfill opportunities, professional development sessions, social and networking events, and much, much more. And please, please be sure to stop by Danaher's booth to visit. Their booth number is 719. For more information, please visit our website, www.nbaa.org/conference. So thank you. That includes our webinar for this evening. Thank you again to Danaher for being a valued partner. And thank you all for attending. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.